because I don't want to fall off the stage and hurt my other foot. But I kind of want to preface my talk about Dick, about, really his legacy is sitting in this room. Everybody here knew Dick, used his research, worked with him at conferences, worked with him on professional projects, and that was, Dick's real legacy was his leadership and mentoring everybody in arid land hydraulics and alluvial fan hydrology. Don't went too far.
The back here.
This is the inaugural Floodplain Managers Award for mentorship. And really this award, it recognizes both mentorship and the contributions to our profession as a whole. And when I say profession as a whole, there's geomorphologists here, hydrologists, hydraulic engineers, everybody that plays a role in all of this field is here. And this is what Dick really enjoyed, was spending time with his colleagues at the conferences, getting to talk with everybody, finding out what they were doing, exchanging ideas. And Dick's leadership in this was contributing to everybody's research or working with people, and really this award was largely created to honor Dick's work. I didn't really want to spend a lot of time talking about his CV, but really to understand how much he contributed to this profession, we really do have to spend some time looking through his CV. It makes me feel like I'm not doing my job, to be honest, and I think that a lot of us could put all our CVs together and not even come close to doing everything he did. I have no idea how he managed this. I also want to talk about my experiences with Dick, and then I'm going to ask some other people to say a few words about their own experiences with Dick too. So Dick actually started his bachelor's degree at Georgia Tech, and like so many other college freshmen, did not focus on his studies. So he got called home back to Ohio by his parents. And I think that's the one time I've known that Dick maybe didn't do his best at whatever he was doing. But anyway, finished his bachelor's and his master's in civil engineering at Ohio State. I know Dick had told me that his dad wanted him to go to work after that. He wanted to get a PhD, which didn't really go over well with Dad, but it got worse because then he told his mom he was going to Berkeley. And that did not set well with his mother's kind of Midwest conservative views. And honestly, Darlene gave me these two pictures of Dick standing at the hydraulic, the flume in the hydraulic lab at Berkeley, and this other picture down, this has got to be it says the Bay model, it's got to be down in Sausalito, but I don't even recognize him. His hair is longer than my hair in these photos. But he enjoyed Berkeley, I know that. And after Berkeley, he went on, to have a very distinguished career in civil engineering and teaching, but he was very humble about it too. Darlene and I kind of went through his office at home, and I found a bunch of awards and papers that I had no idea he had won. He never talked about it. I found a book he'd written on water quality, river salinity, that I didn't know he'd written. I was always so surprised, but through all of his career, he really earned the title and was recognized as a national and international expert on arid land hydrology and alluvial fans. When he first came to Las Vegas to work at Desert Research Institute, he actually started in water quality, but he looked around at the environment, and there's just the whole valley is alluvial fans, and really recognized the challenges that regular standard hydraulics and hydrology that we were all taught in school just could not possibly apply in this kind of environment. And so he really got involved in looking at the fan hydraulics, the associated risk of flooding. He really did pioneer work with this. One of the things I think was so remarkable about Dick was he was able to step back and kind of look at the broad picture and really have a lot of insight on things. And he was recognized for understanding the risk of flooding in arid environments, whether it was on a fan or on an ephemeral channel. And because of that, he worked as a professional consultant and an expert witness in a lot of cases too. His real research interests at DRI, especially in the arid land hydraulics, really focused on risk analysis on fans, flood hazard identification. He really understood the importance of looking at the alluvial fans in terms of an overall interdisciplinary point of view. You had to look at the geomorphology to understand the hydraulics. We're trying to take an engineering timescale of the engineering aspect, whatever we're constructing, but put it in a geologic timescale, which is so much broader. And I don't think a lot of people really appreciated that initially, but Dick was very, very much ahead of his time in that kind of thinking. He also spent a lot of time working on transportation alignments and diversion dikes across a fan. You know, if you cut this off, you're changing all your downstream hydrology and hydraulics. How does that risk change? I actually did part of my graduate work with Dick on railroad transportation alignments to Yucca Mountain on that. But then one thing he always kind of beat into everybody's heads in class was that all the hydrologic models and hydraulic models we have, where we just go get a book, get a table, pull a curve number out, get an infiltration value, whatever, we all take that for granted as if that's written in stone. And really there's a lot of problems with some of that real basic research. And people don't really appreciate the fact that a lot of that really needs to be revisited and re-examined, and we need to come up with much better approaches to dealing with that. And you know, you look around, I look around Las Vegas, the entire city is built with flood control channels that are built with curve numbers. And you know, curve numbers are really not that applicable in arid regions. So there's some kind of level of safety that we just take for granted because we take for granted the components that go into these factors. Dick's real love, being a DRI, was teaching. He loved to teach, he loved to mentor his students. And most of his students have gone on beyond where he left them to continue studying at major universities. Some of his University of Texas students are at Berkeley. Some of them work for the Corps of Engineers or other government agencies. Cindy Dudley is a senior engineer at Luz Berger in Las Vegas. Tim Buchanan is a senior engineer with a mining company, international mining company, and then I stayed at DRI to continue doing the research that I do. Dick actually started teaching at Vanderbilt after he left Berkeley, and he started as assistant professor there and did his 4 years there, and then he was offered an associate professorship at Desert Research Institute. DRI is actually part of the Nevada system of higher education. We're set up like we're a third university, but we don't have students ourselves. We actually have students come in from the universities. So that also meant that DRI faculty can teach at the universities. Unfortunately, that kind of relationship broke down in the early 2000s when the presidents at the universities wanted to kind of build their own research departments. So Dick wasn't teaching as much as he wanted to. So he went ahead and retired from DRI, and then he and Darlene moved to San Antonio, where he taught at University of Texas for quite a while. His favorite classes to teach were open channel, flow, alluvial fan hydraulics. I've taken both of those with Dick. I've actually co-taught alluvial fan hydraulics with Dick. And then he taught sediment transport too. And I asked Darlene what other classes he taught, and she couldn't remember. So those were his favorite. I know they were. But of course, if you're going to teach your own classes, then you go ahead and you write your own books. So Dick wrote Open Channel Hydraulics. It was published in 1985, and that book is still considered a major accomplishment. It's taught through major universities. It's published in Spanish and English. It's taught all over the world. He also wrote kind of one of the first true books on hydraulic processes and alluvial fans. I'll tell you a funny story about these books, because he used both of these books in his classes that I took with him. Darlene actually typed the manuscripts on a Selectric typewriter with interchangeable ball that had regular font on one and all the scientific symbols on the other. And Open Channels, that publisher actually typeset the book, but Elsevier did not typeset the hydraulic processes on Alluvial Fan's book. They actually just took what Darlene had typed, and that is, you can see it, here's the books. You can come up and look at this. This is what Darlene typed. This is what they published. And Dick was so furious that Elsevier hadn't typeset his book that for all his classes, he would take a copy of the manuscript and put it in the copy center, and we'd go pay $10 to get it copied, because he said there's no way, he didn't care if he didn't get his quarter for his royalty, but there was no way he was paying Elsevier to get the money out of that book when they hadn't done anything, and Darlene had done all of it for him. So then, of course, he was a major contributor and major driving force to getting the ASC Manual 110 sedimentation engineering book done, which is probably about 3-4 inches thick. And I was always grateful that Marcelo had edited that in the long run, because otherwise I would have ended up doing a lot on that too. And then Dick's list of peer-reviewed journals it's got to be at least 100. It's remarkable. I made a mistake on a proposal once of asking Dick for his CV, because I needed to attach it, and I learned very quickly to always ask him for a 2-page CV, because I got handed this volume of accomplishments and I had no idea. So it's truly amazing how much he actually did. Really writing those 2 books, Arid Land, or Open Channel Hydraulics, and the Alluvial Fan book, really led to him being awarded both the ASCE Arid Land Hydraulic Engineering Award in '91 and the DRI Dandini Medal in '96. The Dandini Medal is a big deal in the Nevada University system, especially at DRI. So that was really important that he was recognized by his peers. Something else I didn't know about, Darlene told me that he had been awarded Outstanding Civil Engineering Alumni in 2004 by Ohio State. I didn't know that. I guess that it probably occurred after they moved to Texas. But I know Dick would really appreciate being given the mentorship award, because that was where his true love was teaching and mentoring and working with his colleagues and everything else that he did. Dick always said that part of our profession was service, and Dick he managed to do all this too. And this really shows kind of the leader that he really was that he sacrificed a lot of time to serve on committees and to perform the kind of professional service that he encouraged everybody to do. He was an active member of ASCE and EWRI. He served on the executive committee for water resource engineering. He was chair of councils, which usually meant that I was somehow secretary of something. And he served on, there's just a list of key program and technical committees he served on. He was the president of the ASCE Nevada section for a while. I think that was before I started as a student. And he was a reviewer of a lot of different professional journals, including hydraulic engineering for the National Science Foundation and several others. And Darlene actually about a month ago brought me something, and she said, I have to tell you, before I show you this, she's laughing, before I show you this, I have to tell you the backstories. Every time Dick would review a manuscript, he would get out his little red ink pad, and he'd get the stamp out that she brought me, and she said he would stamp the manuscripts all over the place with this stamp, and I turned it over and looked at it, and it says bullshit on it. So the first thought I thought was, God, how many times did he use that on my stuff? So he assured me he did not, that it was only on the manuscripts that he reviewed. So Dick actually retired from DRI officially in 2004, and he was granted the title of emeritus, which it really meant a lot to him. Darlene told me that. Dick, of course, being so humble, didn't say anything to me about it, but Darlene told me that that really meant a lot to him. And after he finally left Texas and came back to Las Vegas in 2012, he told me that, now he finally had time to sit and think and really think about the research questions that had come up over, 40 years of looking at arid land hydrology and hydraulics. And, unfortunately, he didn't have that much time to do that and I feel really bad about that. But even when he was back at DRI, he worked on projects with me as a consultant, and he worked at DRI, he worked with other professional colleagues, he worked in, I think, some legal cases still. The one thing that really was difficult was that because he had the stroke when he was in Texas, he kind of couldn't go in the field as much as he liked to do, and that was hard. I had to go and take photos and call him, and I knew that he hated not being able to go. But at the time of his death, he actually was working on several projects and journal articles, and in fact, he was working with John Fuller on a paper on sheet flooding, and he'd gotten the comments back from the ASCE editor, and he passed away Monday morning, and Thursday night, I sat there and went through the editor's comments with him, and I wished, that I'd known. But on one hand, it makes me happy that he was doing what he liked to do. He was working. He was able to tell me, go get this reference, look at this, add this to it, correct that. Reviewer 3 doesn't know anything about arid land hydrology, all the usual stuff that you do. And he didn't get to finish that paper, so John and I need to finish that. My personal experience, I was very lucky. I wanted to work in surface water hydrology, and when I got down to Nevada, the program that I was told about wasn't exactly the way it was. So Cindy Dudley was just finishing up working with Dick at that time, and he was looking for another graduate student, and I wanted somebody who was doing engineering and surface water, so it was good timing. But of course, I had no idea what I got myself into, because all of those committees Dick was on, usually all the graduate students finally figured out that when Dick was asked to participate in committee, it meant the rest of us were also participating in committee or reviewing manuscripts or doing whatever, and it was great. Dick never excluded me from anything. The first ASCE conference I went to was in San Francisco, and Dick said he was going, I think he was going to West Consultant Party that evening, and I said, all right, I'll see you tomorrow, and he said, no, you're going with me. Everybody you need to know is at that party. So, I got to skip. Cindy said the same thing. We skipped years of networking and working our way up through the ranks and went right to the top. And that's how I know a lot of people in this room, is because Dick introduced me to them. He was always so considerate and patient with his students. I mean, if we had to go over things in class repeatedly, he went over things in class repeatedly. I know maybe some other times he wasn't so patient, but he really was with the student. And he was much more interested in his students knowing the application of the knowledge rather than being tested on facts. In fact, most of his homework and tests were actually based on consulting projects he had done. So we did all sorts of things with moving water around in mines and all sorts of things for open channel, alluvial fans, and but it was nice not to. He didn't need us to memorize the equations. We had to know how the equation was derived and know what it meant. But he was much more interested that we could actually apply it or go back and find it. And I know one time, I think it was the LP3 transformation, he had 6 chalkboards, and he was on the 6th chalkboard and realized he'd made a mistake back on the 2nd chalkboard. And at that, we were so busy trying to write, we weren't even listening, we were just following what he said, and we finally asked him as a class, he was like, could you just Xerox your notes so we could listen to what you're telling us and we can add notations to your notes? And Dick thought that was a great idea, and then kind of wondered why I never thought about that before, but it saved us a lot of headache, I'll tell you that. Dick always shared his knowledge. He was not like so many other researchers in academic settings where they figure something out and they sit on it for 9 months until they finally get something published. As soon as Dick had an idea, everybody knew about it, and he wanted people to try it, and he wanted people to use it, and eventually he got it published too. Not to say, all those publications came from somewhere, but Dick never, he wasn't like that. He was very inclusive and really shared everything with everybody. He very much believed that interdisciplinary research teams on arid land hydrology and hydraulics were important. Geology needs to be there, the hydrology needs to be there, the engineering needs to be there. He always encouraged us to go in the field and look at the problem. He said, every time, a lot of times he'd get involved in legal cases, he's like, these guys didn't go look, because if they'd looked, they would have known better. He always believed in that, and he always went in the field with me. And after, like I said, after he had the stroke and he couldn't go, I know that was really challenging for him. It was challenging for me too. But he never sent anybody to do something he wouldn't do, whether it was travel or field work or dig a hole or put, field gear in. I know that this picture looks like he knows what he's doing with a data logger. I don't think he did, but it looks good. So, but yeah, he's a pretty expensive field hand too. So I wanted some other people to say a few things about their experiences, but one thing was a lot of these quotes came from memorials for Dick, and so many people had the same experiences that I did. He was inclusive, he was warm, he always made you feel like an equal. He was a great professor, he was the best professor I ever had. Someone in this room, who will remain not nameless, referred to him as the ultimate curmudgeon in context of some of his emails that maybe didn't come across the way that emails don't always come across. But I thought that was really funny because in Dick's alluvial fan hydraulics class, he had written, when we were studying hazard risk on alluvial fans, and he had written The Fable of the Curmudgeon. So I thought this was really funny because the curmudgeon lived at the point of the cone, and the villagers below him started to encroach at the base of the cone, and then started to encroach up onto the cone. And the curmudgeon didn't like this, so the curmudgeon would roll balls down this cone and try to knock all these other people off his cone. So obviously all that was the beginning, the introduction to risk hazard on fans. I always assumed the curmudgeon was Dave Dowdy. But when I saw this comment, I suddenly realized that maybe Dick was actually talking about himself, not Dowdy. But I don't know. Anyway, Jeff, do you want to say some words? You want to wait until I'm done? All right. Really, Dick's legacy is really about leadership and mentoring. Leadership involves, like I said, the professional service that Dick did, his teaching, writing, academics, publications. He loved to come to the conferences. Darlene said she'd see a whole other side of Dick, that he got to come and talk to people that understood what he was talking about. What we do, a lot of people have no clue what we do, and you can't just sit down and talk to somebody at a bar about what you do because they don't understand it. So Dick really kind of was in his happy place when he was at these conferences, and I know he'd like to be here. So kind of concluding remarks is that this is the inaugural award, and it will be presented, I think, formally to Darlene tomorrow at lunch at the awards luncheon. But this afternoon, as Tom said, they're going to kind of do unofficially and do the photos this afternoon. But really, Dick really loved to teach and mentor his students. He enjoyed catching up with his colleagues at conferences. And the one thing that Dick always told all of his students and his colleagues, there's work to be done in this subject, so go do it.
For various divisions of ASC as well as EWRI when I was president. I think just very quickly I would like to comment that there are two major, among all the other things, there are two major things I think Dick contributed. He basically, in 20 years, was the person behind Manual 24, Manual 110, ASC's sedimentation manual. And this was a 20-year endeavor that should never have taken 20 years, but I won't go into those details. But it was one of those efforts that he truly probably was more instrumental in than anybody else. The other thing is the Arid Lands Hydraulics Award through ASC, which he was recipient in 1991. Most people probably do not know this, but for about the next decade, he babysat that award to get it awarded every year to somebody that he thought actually worked in arid lands, because there was always a little bit of a political question of what's an arid land and what is not. So with that, Tom?
Anybody else?